Mr. Barber,
Mr. Miller.
how are you?
Very well. Thank
For the record, Brendan Miller, appearing as counsel for the Freedom Corp, which is the entity that represents the protesters, including yourself, that were in Ottawa in January and February of 2022. Good morning. How are you feeling?
Feeling good. Thank you very much.
Great. So first question, if at any time during the protest and the demonstration, if the city of Ottawa or the Ottawa Police Service provided you, the truckers and the protesters, an order from a court saying that you had to leave or move your trucks out of downtown Ottawa, what would you have done?
A court order? I would assume we would have left, yes.
Yeah. And I understand we've had discussions and you've had discussions with legal counsel. You understand what invoking the Riot Act now means, do you not?
Approximately, yes.
Yeah. And so if a mayor, sheriff, or justice invoked the Riot Act and ordered that you and the protesters and the trucks left downtown Ottawa, what would you have done?
Instructed people to leave?
And it's fair to say, as Chief Slawley testified, at no time did any police officer or city official come and tell the protesters that they were illegally parked and illegally, unlawfully protesting and had to leave. Is that fair?
Not to my knowledge. At that point, my truck was out of the city. I had no equipment here.
Okay. So my friend asked you about the memorandum of understanding drafted by a Mr. James Bowder and his Canada Unity organization. I have a few questions about that. So these Canada Unity folks, to your knowledge, how many of them were in Ottawa?
Hard to say. I honestly don't know. James Bowder was the only one at the time that I knew. There was different people, I think, representing him.
Okay. So how many Canada Unity folks did you interact with that you knew were representing him?
I believe none.
Okay.
I believe none.
And did you observe Mr. Bowder or anyone else that may have been with Canada Unity to be violent and commit any violent acts?
No, sir.
Okay. And did you hear of any of these Canada Unity members act in a violent way or try to incite violence?
No.
Did you hear any of these Canada Unity members state they wanted to overthrow the government of Canada by violent means?
I never heard anything.
And I take it that you asked your lawyers in Ottawa at the time, being Keith Wilson and Eva Chipiuk, about this memorandum of understanding from Canada Unity. Is that right?
I don't recall having a conversation with them. I believe it might have been a conversation in the group of people together that it had no bearing and it wasn't to be looked at. It was essentially nothing.
Do you remember the lawyers describing it as legal nonsense?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay. And I also understand, of course, you've had some interactions with Mr. Pat King and as well as some of his followers. How many followers did Mr. King have?
I think Pat had a substantial following on Facebook, I believe.
What do I mean physically in Ottawa?
Oh, there was a few. Absolutely, there was a few.
How would you use a bit of a weasel word? Do you mind if you can clarify? What number would you estimate?
There is so many people here. So many people with every different background. I don't even know if I could guess, Mr. Miller.
Okay. And did you observe Pat King or any of his followers carry out any acts of violence?
I did not know.
And did you hear Pat King or any of his followers incite protesters in Ottawa to commit acts of violence?
No.
Did Pat King or any of his followers ever state to you that they're going to physically and violently overthrow the government of Canada?
Never. No.
And what about this Jeremy McKenzie fella? Did you ever hear of him seeking that protesters act violently or incite people to commit violent acts?
No.
Did Jeremy McKenzie or any of his followers or veterans that you know of say that they were going to physically and violently overthrow the government of Canada?
None.
All right. And lastly, of course, Ms. Tamara Leach. How's your relationship with Ms. Leach?
Definitely strained over the last however many months it's been with a court order against us contacting each other. So yeah, I met her. I spent approximately a month with her, got to know her quite well. She's a genuine, a good person. And And then I only get to see her now through legal counsel. So someday maybe we'll fix that.
Now I take it, how tall is Miss Leach?
Pretty close to midget height. Like,
Yeah, she's about a midget.
I'm
And,
not even going to look at her right now.
but I take it she's still a very scary lady, is she not?
It's the short ones you really have to worry about.
Well, yeah,
honestly.
like Napoleon.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So she's the Napoleon of truckers. Is that fair? All right. Now, did the Napoleon of truckers, Miss Leach, did she ever say to you that she intended to carry out an act of violence while she was in Ottawa?
I don't think she'd harm a butterfly. No, she would never say that.
Right. And I take it she also, you never saw her assault anyone or commit any violent acts?
Absolutely not.
And I take it she never said to you that she was here in Ottawa to violently take over the government of Canada?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. Now, my friends asked you some questions about what I would refer to as collusion with some of the other protests that were outside of Ottawa, right? So you had the big ones, you had Coutts, Windsor, as well as the ones in Manitoba and another one in Surrey. To your knowledge, did any of the truckers or protesters at all in all of Ottawa, to your knowledge, have any coordination in whatsoever in setting up these other protests outside of Ottawa?
No, they were all, as far as I understand, they were all organic movements.
Right. And you heard the evidence from Chief Slully and as well as Commissioner Carrerick. They speculated that it was possible that the one protest in Windsor was coordinated with Ottawa just based on the geographical distance between the two and the splitting of resources. Do you have any comment on that?
I don't agree with that assumption. I can't see being how organic the movement was. Honestly, I'd say we weren't smart enough to come up with that idea.
Okay, well, that's a fine admission. Now, if Mr. Register, if you wouldn't mind putting up document HRF 00000052, it's the one that Canada for the Attorney General put to my client earlier. Now, did you have a chance to review this document before the questions that were asked of you of the Attorney General today?
I don't believe I did.
Can we just give you a quick moment to do that? And so if, Mr. Register, if you could scroll down there. So there, and just for summary for the folks at home, you have a heading with Ottawa weather, inspirational thoughts for the day, a video of Klaus Schwab describing Trudeau's loyalty to the World Economic Forum, a CTV poll on the Emergencies Act, which states that 81% of people disapprove of it, financial supporters, scrolling down, Quebec drops mandates, Feds scrap pre-arrival PCR tests, British Columbia drops capacity limits, bank run, crypto bank, the picture of Madam Deputy Prime Minister, another Albertan, and Daily Humor.
Yes.
Do you see anything invoking violence in that document?
I don't know.
Do you know of any of the documents that are like that, the daily briefings that asked for violence or sought violence?
I can't speak. I don't think I read any of them, but I would say no. There was never any talk of it.
Okay. Now I'd like to bring up, if I may, Mr. Registrar, the other document that Canada put up, which is HRF 00000083. Okay. And you were, it was put to you, the video of Mr. King, Pat King was put to you with respect to the Bullets comments. And this was the media release, I take it, that was released in response to that?
The dates seem pretty far apart for that. I believe the Bullets comment was earlier, so I'm assuming this was the day I was arrested, so I haven't read this one.
Okay. Do you want to have a read?
Yes. Yeah, I didn't review it at the time, but I've seen it now since.
And I take it, do you agree with those statements therein?
I do, yes.
Okay, thank you. And I also understand that with respect to the daily security briefings, the one that we looked at earlier, you weren't involved in drafting any of these?
I was not, no.
And I take it you didn't review any of them before they were sent out?
No, sir.
All right. Now, with respect to the mandates, and I just want to touch on that briefly, can you tell the commission about how the mandates impacted your children, other than what you already have with respect to your daughter's clarinet story?
Well, I've got a 19-year-old son, Jonathan. He was 18 at the time. He's refused to get the vaccine. He's been around people with COVID multiple times, and he's yet to catch it for some reason. So he's going off his natural immunity. He's a very strong-willed guy. I don't know where he gets that from. He refuses to get it, and I stand behind him on that.
Okay. And what else? Anything else other than what you've already said?
My parents, my father received his second dose of his, and it could be together or not, his gallbladder quit working on him. And I watched my father deteriorate quite badly. He's fine now, but still, you lose that body mass. You don't seem to get it back at 70 years old. So,
Okay. Now, I want to move on from that and talk about some of the moving of the trucks. I understand at some point in the protest in Ottawa, you moved your trucks from Wellington, or your truck out of the city to a remote camp.
yes,
When was that?
February 7th is my best recollection.
Okay. And is it true that when you were trying to leave downtown Ottawa, that the police roadblocks made it very hard for you to leave?
It was very tricky. Yes, there was roadblocks everywhere.
So can you describe for the commission your initial moving your truck and trying to get out of downtown Ottawa, and just sort of walk us through in a timeline?
It was February 7th, I believe. I was parked in front of the Supreme Court. So, and I still didn't really know my way around Ottawa that well at that time. So I remember going down whatever street would have been near there, Lion or somewhere in there. It was tough. It was hard to navigate your way back out of there and then make sure you were on the right street that was heading the right direction. So eventually I made my way out of the city. It was tough.
And how did you get past the barricades and the blockades?
You had to get a police approval to move every single barricade. There was a police car. There was, when we first arrived in Ottawa, the city officials used payloaders, graders, and trucks to blockade the streets for safety concerns or whatever it was they did. And then when the snowfall came, the first snowfall came, I remember they removed all that and they replaced them with concrete barriers. And then a police car would sit at each barrier in the center and would be able to move to allow traffic to go through. So,
And to your knowledge, was there any incidents of any of the truckers and protesters trying to leave but could not?
no. If somebody needed to leave, we would facilitate that no matter what.
And what I mean is with respect to moving the police barricades.
Oh, no, it was a job to get somebody out of the city, but nobody ever had troubles. It wasn't forced to stay, if you're meaning that.
Sounds good. And with respect to you walking the streets during the protest, what did you see?
Life-changing. Yeah, it was amazing. There was so much grown men crying on your shoulder, women crying on your shoulder, grandmas, grandpas, you name it, kids. It was really, and it was an experience, unforgettable.
Is there anything notable that you remember of who you spoke to?
Who I didn't speak to. It was everybody. You couldn't. I remember Mr. Marazzo and I went for a walk, and Mr. Wilson, and it was like Mr. Wilson explained it as like walking down the street with Mick Jagger. He said, because no matter where you went, there was somebody wanting to stop and talk with you. It was a lot of love.
And can you tell us about the efforts to move the trucks on Monday, February 14th?
Frustrating. We had all those trucks ready to go 7 o'clock in the morning. We'd spoke with them the night before on the Sunday. We had the streets lined up. We had everybody all placed. We had organized trucks to come. I don't remember the block. It was right in front of Parliament on pretty much on West Block. We were able to we get them all organized, all warmed up, and then we couldn't get anybody to move. The police wouldn't move. The city officials. You could tell by my text messages with Kim that it was frustrating. We were ready to go, and we were deprived have time to get things going.
So at that point in time, the police blockaded you in
Yes.
from leaving?
Yeah.
Even though you were trying to leave?
We were trying to, the truck, I don't know if the trucks leaving had as much trouble as the trucks trying to get up onto Wellington. That was what my focus was. My focus was only getting the trucks on the Wellington. Other guys looked after the ones that wanted to leave the city.
So from where the trucks were parked, did the police move the barricades to allow you out?
I'm assuming so. I didn't take part in the actual leaving. Like I said, my focus was the trucks on the Wellington.
Okay, so you were up at Wellington at that time and you weren't down where the trucks were trying to get out of?
Yes.
And I understand during that time that you were able to get approximately 100 trucks and protest vehicles to leave downtown residential areas, which included 40 semi-trucks, of which 23 went up to Wellington. Is that fair?
Yes.
And you were aware that the vehicles that left downtown and did not go up to Wellington, they were either went home or they went out to a base camp in Arnprior or Enbrun. Is that fair?
Yes.
And so you had cleared out 2 blocks on Albert Street and from some other streets. Is that about right?
In the time we were allotted, we cleared out the 2 blocks. We had plans to clear out
Okay.
more.
You just hold on a minute. Yes.
It's David Mizukovsky for the record. I did not object initially, but I do understand that the rules of the commission do not allow counsel for the parties to cross-examine. And my friend has been cross-examining on several occasions. This is a matter of some contention. So I would just ask that his questions be phrased in a non-leading fashion.
So
Okay.
that's not a problem. So can you tell me about then how many trucks do you believe were moved in total?
I was told 100 vehicles, approximately 40 trucks, 23 of which we moved up onto Wellington.
Okay. And while you were involved in the protest and in Ottawa, did you attend any businesses in downtown Ottawa?
Many. Frequented the Tim Hortons for meals. We frequented any restaurants that were open. Any business that I was in, the Iconic Cafe was another one. Shawarma. Any business that we were in flourished. They did really well. Then they said a lot of the businesses said they hadn't profited so much in the last 2 years as they did in that 3 weeks.
And during that, just adding to it, what was your relationship like with those business establishments, their staff and owners during the protest? Want to tell me a little bit about it?
I remember the Tim Hortons on one of the corners there. Truckers were mopping the floor because the staff was overrun, and guys had the mop pail out and they were cleaning the floors. Of course, it's winter time, sloshy and disgusting floors. I was pretty proud to see that.
And did any of the business owners approach you before the end of the protest about anything they wanted to say to you?
Not that I recall, no.
And I take it you've seen throughout this proceeding, witnesses discuss views on assaultive or threatening behavior and what that means. You've seen that?
Apparently, yes.
Now, I understand that you heard a statement from the Prime Minister where he called unvaccinated Canadians racist, misogynist, and asked, should we tolerate these people? Do you remember hearing that?
I remember hearing that, yeah.
What's your perception of that? Would you say, in your opinion, is that assaultive or threatening?
Just let's be careful again. You've got the.
Understood. What was your perception of that statement?
Very divisive for a leader of a country to be pitting one person in the country against the other person. I would say I felt, not very leadership worthy.
And have you experienced assaultive and threatening words and behavior from other politicians or others?
I've seen some in the news reports, I guess. Yeah, there's a few. Not that I can recall. Not that I can recall the names of the ministers, but there's been a few.
Okay. Well, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Sir, I'm going to ask under, I can't recall the rule, but with respect to the order of examination, as we got the documents from this particular witness, several hundred of them, not until this afternoon, I do have concerns from the brief ones I've reviewed, and I have given a written objection to your counsel with respect to those. What I would like to do in the meantime, sir, is I would like your leave and approval to examine this witness following her paralegal examining her. I can tell you at this point, I don't have many questions for this witness at all. My concern is the beginning of a character assassination, as well as attacking my client, the corporation itself. And given what was just asked by the government of Canada and what was just said, I would like to sit back and see what the evidence is with respect to the character assassination evidence that I think this witness is intending to give before I do my examination, sir.
Okay, well, I'm not sure we should be talking about character assassinations. Rather, there are some issues being raised. I think let's try and not inflame things and take one step at a time. So you'd like to defer at the moment
I have no
they-
idea what
they'd
they're
have to-
entitled.
Identify the number.
So,
Do we have the number for that?
Sir, I'm going to rise at this
Where is
point.
it?
All of this happened after the fact, well after the events in question. And there's actually, as I understand, also some potentially privileged records in here. And
Okay.
I would like.
Privilege would
submit-
mean I would have had to
Excuse me,
sign on a
excuse me,
privilege.
Excuse me, we're just,
Yeah.
we
I have the
worked through
numbers.
me, sorry.
So, sir, with respects to relevance and materiality, I think that if you gave a direction that this witness is limited with respect to giving evidence regarding the time frame up to and including, say, after the EA was no longer invoked, I believe that would be appropriate, sir.
That's okay with us. Our information is prior to the EA invocation.
Okay, because I think, as is probably obvious, we're dealing with the declaration of the Emergency Act and
That's fine.
so on. There may be things after. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe and press that notification button to receive more information like this. You can also follow me at yellowhead.vote to stay informed and get the inside scoop. Thank you.